ఓం శ్రీ గురుభ్యో నమః. ఓం శ్రీ కృష్ణ పరబ్రహ్మణే నమః. వెల్కమ్ టు కృష్ణ కిరణాలు వెబ్ ఛానల్. టుడే we are into part 6 of KAAQS, KAAQS. Krishna answers Arjuna's questions. All these questions are coming from the second chapter, which is Sankhya Yoga. And questions and answers are coming from the second chapter, Sankhya Yoga. One of the key slokas that Krishna says in this chapter is Asochya nanvasochastvam prajnavadamscha bhashase gatasu nagatam sumscha nanu sochanti panditaha. A person who is a pandit in the description as given by Krishna, not the Pandit that we see in our normal parlance of the use of words. Gatasu nagatam sumscha nanu sochanti panditaha. A person who is intelligent will not think about the gata that has happened in the past, or will he be thinking about the future? Nanu sochanti panditaha. He doesn't waste his time grieving about the past, nor having a great anticipation of the future. He is rooted in the present, is what this sloka says. So today, the other thing that Krishna keeps talking about in this chapter is Sthita Prajna. Sthita Prajna is a person whose intelligence remains stable. Prajna means intelligence. Sthita means stable, seated permanently in that state of intelligence. And who is this Sthita Prajna? Who can be called as a Sthita Prajna? The first question for today is, who can be called as a Sthita Prajna? What are his qualities? What are the characteristics of a Sthita Prajna? Krishna says that a Sthita Prajna is one who gives up all desires and contentment, is always in the self. He gives up all desires and is always contented in the self, in his own self. So for his happiness, he is not dependent on any external factors. He is dependent on internal factors. He is dependent on his self. Nothing disturbs him. He gives up all desires. Giving up all desires, some people may say giving up all desires, so should I go to a forest and sit there and give up all desires? No, that doesn't mean that. Giving up all desires doesn't mean that you give up your work. You have to keep doing your work, but you give up the desire for the fruit of the work that you are doing. As we discussed in part 5, you have to be a karma yogi. Not just doing karma, but you should be a karma yogi. A karma yogi is one who is constantly hooked on to the work, but not hooked on to the fruits of the work. He performs his work without the desire for the fruits. And he is also not distressed by sorrow. It's very easy to feel sorrow, but he is not distressed by it. This doesn't mean that you don't have to feel sorrow. You have to feel sorrow, but you should not get distressed by sorrow, because these are things like which keep coming and going. He knows that the sorrow comes and goes, the happiness comes and goes. So he's not distressed by the sorrow, nor is over enthusiastic about happiness. And he doesn't hanker after pleasures. A Sthita Prajna, he doesn't hanker after pleasures. The pleasures, he knows that the pleasures that he is seeking are not temporary, because pleasures are like they're never ending. It is like if you keep on hankering for pleasure, it is like pouring ghee to the fire. The more you keep hankering for pleasures, the more you would like to enjoy it. You like more enjoyments. There is one in there is one story of one Ayati, a king, who wanted to enjoy after he became old. He wanted to enjoy youthfulness again. So he does a penance and for Lord Brahma, and Lord Brahma comes and asks him, "What is it that you're wanting to get from me?" Then Ayati asks him, King Ayati asks him, seeks a boon, asking him for youthfulness again. But Brahma says that it is against the nature to give you youthfulness again, because the body has to undergo these four changes of boyhood, youth, old age, and death. So I cannot give you that. But Ayati keeps insisting. So Brahma, what he does is, I can do one thing. If anyone who is young, he is willing to exchange his youth with your old age, you can do that. I am giving you this boon. So Ayati says, fine. And so he goes and asks several young people to exchange their youth with them. But why would anybody do that? Why would anybody want to give up their youthfulness, even if he is a king? They wouldn't like to do that. So Ayati approaches his son and asks him for exchange of youth. Ayati's son, being very obedient, and he believes that he has to serve his father and his wish, so he accepts it. So Ayati becomes young again, and he starts enjoying all the pleasures of life, whatever comes with youth. And again, after several years, Ayati becomes old again. And he says in the end of this that I've enjoyed two youths, 2 times of being young in this one life. But let me tell you that there is no end to enjoyment. There is no end to the pleasures if you keep running after them, because they keep on going up and up. That's what happens when you add ghee to the fire. This is a story of Ayati, who enjoyed 2 youths. So there is no end. So Sthita Prajna is always contented in his own self. He doesn't get distressed by the sorrow. He doesn't hanker for pleasure. He is free from any kind of attachment or fear and hatred. He doesn't fear anything. Doesn't mean there are a lot of people who keep not fearing means what? There is fear in this person also, but it is caution that he exercises. He also fears that he doesn't want to keep coming back and back to this worldly life. And when we say that don't be attached, people again, some of them who are very logical, they say, how can you be without attachment? That doesn't mean that you do not have attachment. You do have attachment. You have attachment towards good things. You have attachment towards things that help yourself. And you have detachment to things that are not permanent, to things that don't help you in your advancement of the self that is inside. And the people who are Sthita Prajnas, they do not give room for any kind of hatred towards anything, because they see samatvam, they see themselves in everything, they see God everywhere. If you want to call it God, they see God everywhere. They see themselves in everything. So they are free from attachment, sorrow, fear, and hatred. And a few other characteristics are they don't rejoice or hate anything. Na dvesti, na abhinandati is one of the slokas that Krishna says in this chapter, that you don't hate anything that comes to you, which comes on its own, which you don't like, you don't hate it. Nor do you get excited about something which comes to you, which you like. They remain stable. Sthita prajnas, they remain stable in the face of receiving something which they want, and in the same way, in the face of getting something which they don't want, they are neutral. They don't get excited, nor do they feel hatred towards what they get or to anything that happens in their life. This is what a person who is Sthita Prajna called as. And where is this uncontaminated joy that a Sthita Prajna gets? He gets this uncontaminated joy from the self. He believes in his self, which is not the physical body. The next question is, when does a man become Sthita Prajna? We have seen the qualities and characteristics of a Sthita Prajna. But when does a man become Sthita Prajna? Krishna says that when man withdraws all the senses from the objective world and turns his mind inwards, then he becomes a Sthita Prajna. So how do you turn your senses inwards? How do you control? How do you withdraw your senses from the objective world? When you withdraw them, you definitely become a Sthita Prajna. So withdrawal doesn't mean that running away. Again, I'm repeating here. Withdrawal doesn't mean that you run away from the karma yoga or the karmas that you should perform with the sense of yoga. Karma yoga. You cannot run away from your responsibilities. But withdraw your senses from things which don't help you in your advancement of this life and in the lives that come after this. So the next question might come, is it sufficient for liberation to control the senses? Krishna says, no, it is not sufficient to control. If you just control the senses, it is not sufficient to liberate the thing. What happens is, okay, you might say that I'm giving up everything, I'm going to Himalayas or I'm going to a forest. Okay, you go to a forest, you have changed your clothing, you have changed your attire, you have now become, by physical looks, you have now become like a sadhu or a yogi or a sannyasi. But if your mind is thinking, even after sitting in the Himalayas or in a forest, deep forest, if your mind is still thinking about the morning coffee that you had or the food that you enjoyed the most, then you're actually not controlling or withdrawing the senses. So what is required is withdrawing the senses, asanga sesrena drudena chitva. You have to cut the roots in the mind. Then only the control of the senses is said to have happened. If you keep thinking about them inside with only physical changes outside, it is not going to help. That's what Krishna says. And how is that done? How can it be done? The very simple answer that Krishna gives is, it is by direct perception of the Atma. Atma, as we already discussed, it is inside every being, inside every creature, right from a small insect to the creator Brahma. This is what it is. When you think inwards about the self that is there residing in this body and every other body, that is how you achieve the control of the senses. And then the next question is, what is the power of the senses? The senses, which are the five senses, the touch, the feel, the sound, shabda, sparsa, rupa, rasa, gandha. These five senses and the sense organs are so powerful that they can attract you anytime to fall from the realization that must have come to you. So it is like a tightrope walk. A single movement, a microsecond mistake could make the person who is walking on the tightrope to fall down. This is also like that, is what Krishna says. The senses are so powerful as to draw away the mind of even a scholar who is striving for liberation. So the example for this is to tell you. A lot of you must have heard about Viswamitra. He was a great Rajarshi. So Viswamitra, to distract his Indra is always ready to spoil the rishis from achieving the control on their senses. He keeps sending Indra, who is in charge of the senses. He keeps sending somebody or the other, like Ramba, Urushi, Menaka, to these munis to test them and to make them fail. That's how Viswamitra, once when Menaka was sent down to distract him from a great penance that he was undertaking, fell to Menaka, and he had to again come back to the worldly pleasure. If Viswamitra, a Rajarshi, who could fall, what about ordinary mortals like us? It is not a big deal for us to fall, even for the smallest sense of the smallest smell or a sight, which could distract us from not being able to keep our senses in control. So that's the kind of power these senses have. So what is required is a constant observation on our senses to see that we don't fall. How we can see this is, suppose you want to give up the habit of having coffee. The moment somebody is making coffee and it reaches through your nostrils the aroma of the coffee, so you are drawn towards it. Or you see some food which you like, you are drawn towards it, which you don't want to consume, but you see it en route, your office or wherever you feel like consuming. These are things which keep happening. So the senses are so powerful that they can alter your intelligence to suit them and not you, and to distract you. So the praise and the praise or the curse that somebody gives could distract your sense perception, in the sense they could take you out of control. Somebody praises you, then you get elated, and somebody curses you or throws some bad words at you, you get distracted. These are things, how the sound can play on you. So this is the power of the senses. The next question is, what are the means of self-realization? How do you realize the self that is there inside? Restraining the senses and fixing the mind in Atma are the ways of self-realization. As we just discussed, how the senses can be very powerful. So restraining the senses from running helter-skelter, running away and pulling you towards it. That's how, by restraining them through practice. Again, I repeat here, asamsayam mahabaho manodurnigraham chalam abhyasena tu kaunteya vairagyena cha gruhyate. One of the slokas that Krishna says, no doubt, Arjuna, that this is very difficult to control the mind, but abhyasam and vairagyam, I repeat this in every part, abhyasam and vairagyam are the two things. Abhyasam is practice and vairagyam is detachment. These are the two things to realize the self and control the mind. And the next question is, what knowledge is firm? What knowledge is firm? The knowledge of the man who has controlled all the senses remains firm. All the five senses, the man who controls all the five senses, his knowledge is the firm. So the body is called as, the body has got 9 doors, 2 eyes, 2 nostrils, mouth, the 2 ears. Here itself it makes 7, and then you have the body, lower body parts, you have 2 doors. So the body is comprising of Navdvare Pure Dehi. This body has got 9 doors. So all these senses which could affect the whole body, they can, this Dehi, this body has to be, the senses control this body. So if you control the senses, the body is also in shape. And the next question is, what is the cause of man's destruction? What causes man to destroy himself? Contemplation of the sense world is the first in the chain of causes leading to destruction. Contemplation, and it means thinking about some object or some subject constantly is bound to occupy your self. So that is the first in the chain of causes that leads to destruction. How does it lead? The next question is, how does it lead to man's destruction? Krishna says, the sloka for this is, Jhayato Vishyan Pumsaha Sangasteshopajayate Sangat Sanjayate Kama Kamat Krodhobi Jayate Krodhat Bhavati Sammoha Sammoha Smrti Vibramaha Smrti Bhramsya Buddhinaso Buddhinasyat Pranasyati. That's what Krishna says in the slokas, two slokas in the second chapter. The literal meaning of this is, the man, by contemplation of the sense objects, desire for them arises. When you keep thinking about some object or subject, the desire to possess them or desire to experience them will arise. And the desire, when it arises, it leads to anger. When it is frustrated, when you are not able to fulfill the desire, it leads to anger. And what does anger do? Anger causes delusion. Anger causes delusion. And this delusion causes loss of memory, because it plays on the memory and you forget everything else. When it is playing on the memory, that means you're only thinking about that, and the rest of the things are forgotten. This is how people get into wrong tracks. And then when the memory is lost, it destructs discrimination. It disrupts discrimination. Dhyayato Vishan Pumsaha Sangasteshopajayate Sangat Sanjayate Kama Kamat Krodhobi Jayate Krodhat Bhavati Sammoha Sammoha Smrti Vibramaha Smrti Bhramsya Buddhinasyat. So discrimination, Buddhinasyat, the discrimination power will vanish. And then when the loss of discrimination happens, man, of course, will perish. The discrimination is, people we see that, they keep doing a lot of things which are against the law. We keep hearing about rapists or people who keep doing thefts. The discriminatory power is lost in them, that this is not good. That they have killed the self inside. Their self has been killed inside. They have destructed themselves already to be able to perform such things which are brutal. So this is how they destroy themselves. In the same way, every man who doesn't control the senses will naturally be rooted to destruction. This is what Krishna says, and with this we end the part 6 of KAAQS, Krishna answers Arjuna's questions. Thank you for being here and have a great time. Hare Krishna.